104.7 The Cave. KKLH, Marshfield, Springfield. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Touchdown, Kansas City!
Now, it's time for Ned Talk.
Yes, sir. Back in the studio once again. 2 weeks since we've last convened with Ned Reynolds to talk about sports. That's like 2 weeks without air, Ned.
I'll tell you what it means. It means we all have to go through spring training again.
Yeah, we're rested. I think we're rested, ready to go. I'm pretty excited. Pretty excited to be back at it. John Oliver in the studio with us. John, how are you?
I'm doing well. I may have sprained my ACL earlier during the warm-ups.
We had the 2 weeks to kind of get yourself back in shape. And off the injury reserve list, our very own Josh Roberts. Josh, how are you?
Hey, it's good to be back.
Good to be back.
I'm off the IR. I'm off the quarantine. I'm here.
Yeah, we got to turn up that microphone, though. That microphone's got problems. We're going to have to work on that.
Okay.
So
you got to scream.
Let's start out with our very own Ned Reynolds. He's going to tell us who's hot in the NFL. It's brought to you by All Service Air Service.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, the hottest team is the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. But keep in mind, they're playing a very watered-down schedule. It's the way things are. It's the way the NFL has put it together. And they haven't, for instance, they played the Jacksonville Jaguars today and beat them 27-3. It's a challenge, of course. It's all National Football League, and they're all pro athletes. But, hey, the Steelers are better than all these other teams. Are they, and now here comes the comparison, are they as good as the Kansas City Chiefs, who they are not playing this year? No, they are not. So while the Steelers, again, will be number one in the power rankings for whatever the hell that means, which is nothing, doesn't mean a thing, the Chiefs, in my opinion, are the number one team in pro football, and we're about to experience what they're going to do to the Las Vegas Raiders tonight.
John, who's your pick for the team that's the one to watch right now? Because in the interim weeks, we've had a lot of kind of shakeups with the NFL. So what's your opinion on that?
It's really hard for me there's two that stand out to me. Boy, the Miami Dolphins have looked great with Tua at quarterback. I mean, what a turnaround for them. And then we were just watching this gentleman in the highlights a little bit ago. Alex Smith has Washington firing on all cylinders. So, I mean, it starts at quarterback a lot of times with a winning culture, and I think both of those teams have playoff aspirations now at this point.
And Josh, and you can't bring up a college team.
Oh, I can't?
No, you can't.
Well, first I want to say that I think Ned's a little biased against Pittsburgh, which I understand because he's a Philly guy. He's never going to root for the Steelers. But at the same time, I do agree with you. I think the Chiefs are still the best team in football, just when you look at the ability and the execution and everything. But you can't take anything away from the Steelers. The Steelers are playing really well.
Now I'm going to repay the compliment because I know you're a big Tide fan. Now, I am allowed to talk about you aren't.
Yeah, I'm not.
Hey, look, I heard the guy on I was taking a trip yesterday and heard the guy on the radio say, hey, Ohio State is the number one team in America. They're unbeaten. I said, buddy, you do not know what on earth you're talking about. Alabama, I watched them absolutely destroy Kentucky last night, and it was a game in which they pulled back. They had their third and fourth teams in there, and they're still smashing this ball club.
63-3 was
and
the score
Kentucky's not that bad.
No.
So now I do think the game, I believe they play Auburn next week, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Auburn's a bit down, but be that as it may, I want to see Alabama play Ohio State and Clemson.
Yeah.
Because I think the Tide is better than both those teams. Now, I know we're getting off the beaten path.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in our next segment. But let's think back 2 weeks ago, and I think I'm going to give you props right now because you called the Carolina Panthers game with the Chiefs as being one that could be a trap game, and it was a little nerve-wracking, but still a workmanlike performance from the Chiefs.
Not a great performance, however, and that's what has me a little bit concerned about tonight. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the Chiefs win this one tonight. But Kansas City's defense is not playing as well as it should be, and I think the Carolina game brought that to the fore. The Panthers were able to run and run pretty much at will. I mean, they had 345, I think it was, in running off, whatever the case might be. The Carolina Panthers were able to do things and could have, with a few breaks, won that game. All right, what do you face tonight? Josh Jacobs, who is running very well, a guy from Alabama, and you face a quarterback who's an old, proven veteran. That Now, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting a high-scoring game. I think Chiefs win it because I don't think Las Vegas can stop them on offense. Nobody can. But Kansas City's going to give up some points.
John, let me ask you this. This obviously is a game that sticks in the craw of the Kansas City Chiefs. They feel that they are the best team in the NFL. I agree that they are the best team in the NFL, but they have that one crooked number on their resume right now, and it's against this team. Do you think there was extra hard workouts this week?
That's beyond a shadow of a doubt. I mean, losing that game, every team wants to go undefeated. I don't think it's the best thing, as I've mentioned on the show before. I think a loss helps, build a title run most of the time. But for this game, I guarantee they're amped up to the max. The Raiders are a good football team. They're not, they're not sloths by any means. They are a good football team with a lot of young talent. So this game could be closer than you might think, but I cannot see any scenario where the Chiefs don't win this tonight.
There was some bulletin board material this week. I guess when the Raiders took a victory lap at Arrowhead, that didn't set too well with the guys in the other locker room. And Andy Reid talked about that. He said, not our style.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the way we do things. Josh, what do you think you're going to see tonight?
Well, I think it may not bother Andy Reid, but it bothered the rest of the team because that's a disrespect. And granted, yes, the Raiders won that game. They had every right to do a victory lap in the parking lot or whatever they did. And that's kind of Gruden's MO. He's more of a player's coach, so he tries to get them amped up and fired up with things like that, and I get it. But I think that is great bulletin board material and has been for the Chiefs. And the Chiefs don't need much motivation because they're good. But maybe they need that little pinch that says, hey, these guys showed you a little bit of disrespect, so don't let up on them. Because my whole thing is, and this is something that I've talked to a friend of mine about for years, that I don't know if we've talked about it. I feel like at times the Chiefs play down to the level of their competition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, to me, that comes back to play calling. I think they try to get cutesy sometimes when they don't need to, and that gives the other team opportunities to stay in a game. And I think that if they do that tonight, they might end up losing again. What they need to do is just do what works for them and destroy the Raiders in every aspect because they have the ability to do it.
Let's go back to last week's game because I wanted to bring this up. I heard it on the radio. So when Mitch Holthus was trying to describe it, and God bless him, he did the best he possibly could, and I kind of had an idea in my mind what he was talking about. I was told my wife, I got to go home and I got to see this. When they started, and I don't know if I can even do it close to the justice that Mitch Holthus did, when they started Patrick Mahomes in motion, and then he came back through and got the ball. I've never seen that. Have you, Ned? Have you ever? You've been around this longer than we have. You ever seen anything?
Must
like
admit,
that?
I have not. I thought it was a very clever play. It's a bit of trickology, so to speak. But you've got to throw in a little gimmick every so often, and I thought it was very intelligent and typical of what Andy Reid can come up with. You start playing conservative football at this level of the season, and you're going to run into trouble. You better come up with something new. I don't necessarily mean a double or triple reverse or anything of that nature, but something that's going to throw the other teams off balance because these, as we've said many times before, these are pro athletes and they can respond to any circumstance. But yes, I had not seen that before.
John, what did you think of it?
I love the creativity with the play calling. I have to say that. And I think Andy Reid's, he had a little bit of this when he took the Eagles to the Super Bowl with McNabb and with Terrell Owens and how talented they were. But I think he has got so many fun toys to play with. I think he's having fun with it. And I think you need to keep teams, on their toes. And I think throwing this kind of thing in is perfect.
Well, you get the athletes to do it. Josh.
Exactly.
You watch a lot of college football, and college football has a little more trickeration in it than the NFL. You ever seen anything like that?
No, I've never seen anything like that before. That's very unusual. And I agree with what you guys are saying. I mean, I'm not saying that they need to just run the ball, punt. But my problem is it seems like Andy Reid always had the knock of being too conservative in big games. He's gotten over that hump now. They've won a championship. But now I sometimes feel like he's just saying, "Oh, just do whatever you want." They're playing, sandlot football at times, and so they're not accomplishing. I mean, I go back to Magic Johnson used to always say that their goal in the Showtime era of the Lakers was to have a lead so big in the third quarter that none of the starters had to play in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. The Chiefs have the ability to do that against most of the teams in the NFL, but they don't. And I think the reason they don't is because they do a little more of that trickeration and tricky stuff, and it doesn't work, and then they end up punting more often than they should and giving the other team an opportunity. Because of what you said, Ned, the NFL has a high level of competition and a high level of talent, and you're only going to get away with that stuff for a certain amount of time with these teams, and then they're going to end up scoring. And then what are you going to do?
And the players on the other team don't like to be shown up with plays like that. And that sticks in their crawl, too, pretty well.
Bet.
And the hit is going to be a little bit harder, and perhaps the level of motivation is going to be a whole lot more direct. Yeah, I don't think there's any question about the fact that the Chiefs have a big target on their back. Everybody knows what a good team they are. Hey, let's play our better level of football if we can. Now, there's some teams that just simply don't have the personnel to do that. But the Las Vegas Raiders do have, not to keep up with them on a consistent basis, but for a game, which they've already shown, they do have that.
Let me ask you guys this. Do you think the Chiefs are perhaps a victim of their own success in some regards? Is that the fact when you turn on a game, you almost expect them to score every time they have the ball? And let's face it, that no matter who they're playing, that's not realistic. It's not realistic at all. And it's the same thing goes for Patrick Mahomes. If he's not throwing for 500 or 600 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns and throwing with his left hand, well, he just had a workmanlike game.
Right.
I mean, do you think that's true?
I do, and I think it's a level of arrogance, and I don't mean that to be derogatory in any way. And Mahomes is a guy who has a very steady head on his shoulders. But when you read and listen to and watch every single sports event that goes on, it's this and that and how good the Chiefs are and how Mahomes is the player of the century and all this sort of thing. Hey, that has to have an effect on you. In some cases, if an individual is mature enough, a positive respect. But so many of them are not. And when they hear this over and over, hey, we're pretty doggone good. We can go out there and beat anybody.
Case in point. Let's talk about this for just a second, because I know that, John, you're a huge fan of Lamar Jackson.
I am.
They may perhaps be one of the biggest disappointments this season so far. They lost a game today. They're 9-4 in this, or I forget what the record is, 6-4 or something like that right now. A little bit disappointing. I mean, people really thought they would be neck and neck with the Chiefs. He can't do it by himself.
No. And that's what people forget. You know, we had one of my son's friends over to the house, and he was talking about how bad the Ravens are and how they have no talent and things like that. Guys, they didn't forget to play football. Here's what happens, and it happened with the Chiefs last year. Teams make adjustments based on what they're seeing. Lamar Jackson cannot do it all. I've never seen anyone be able to scramble out of the pocket the way he can and still make throws. He is phenomenally talented. However, teams have seen this now. They know how to game plan.
They spy.
Absolutely. So, I mean, in that being said, I kind of expected them to regress a little bit. Now, you know, them missing the playoffs, that's going to be a disappointment if that comes to fruition. Right now, they're on the outside looking in after losing to the Titans today. And, you know, they've got a lot of young receivers. And just like you were talking about with the Chiefs, the same thing happens with that. Guys are going to drop balls. Guys are going to not complete every pass. We've never had a quarterback go a season with 100% completion rating. We expect that sometimes, but they're human, and they're going to fail a good 30% of the time at least.
They're not Alabama, right, Josh?
Exactly. There are a lot of X factors involved in any play in football, and that's, you know, if everything goes right, it's a cool play, and it moves the sticks. But if everything doesn't go right, there's the opportunity for it to fail.
And when you're dealing with the professionals, you're dealing with the highest level of intellect and physical ability in the world. And when you're challenging defensive coaches to come up with some kind of a gimmick, guys, every single waking moment of the day, these professional coaches are looking at, see what he did there? Yep. The tendency here, let's guard against this tendency out there. And every human being has specific tendencies that can be recorded, including Patrick Mahomes.
That's right.
I'm not so sure somebody's not going to come up somewhere along the line and devise some kind of defense. May not be this year, But we'll see.
Well, we saw the Raiders. I mean, they obviously did a really good job in the first game because they were able to contain him. They have a lot of athletes on that side of the ball that were able to put pressure on him and then cover in the zone deep enough that he was not able to get passes off. And that was the key to their victory in that first game.
But, Joe, the problem with it tonight is that he being the Raiders as an organization, have 4 of their starters out because of COVID. And there's a different level. Linemen and defensive players are not interchangeable. There are differences in ability, and you see that.
For a while, they had 10 players that might have been out. So,
well, we shall see. We are not too far away from the start of the game tonight. Remember, it's America's game tonight. But we'll have the coverage for you of that. The pregame starting in just about 40 minutes. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Not America's game, but a game that's going on right now. The Cowboys and the Vikings. Cowboys, newsflash, Cowboys winning. They're taking on the Vikings right now. Let's check in with Ned and find out what's brewing in college football. It's brought to you by Arctic Food Equipment. Interesting day yesterday. The big game on the schedule, one of the big games on the schedule, canceled because of COVID.
Which absolutely disturbed the daylights out of me 2 hours before kickoff. 2 hours because the sides could not come together on an agreement with protocol. That, ladies and gentlemen in here, that if there are any ladies listening, is rubbish.
Yes.
And I'm so appalled that was allowed to even be a decision. 2 hours before kickoff? Come on. Anyway, back to the big game was the Battle of the Unbeatens in the Big Ten at Columbus. And Ohio State gets off to a big lead and then has to hold off a really challenging Indiana team, an Indiana team that's pretty doggone good. Yes. But Ohio State, do they belong in the top rankings? Well, you have to give it to them, even though they've only been, 3 games? Something like that. For my money, I mentioned Alabama. I think they're the best team. Clemson is certainly right up there with them. And watch out, guys, they're not going to be in the playoffs. They won't be in the playoffs because they've lost 2 games. But Oklahoma is really coming on.
Yeah. But no love for Coastal Carolina? They're 8-0.
They are 8-0, and they haven't really. They're playing the Sun Belt, which is not bad. It's a Division I. I'll tell you, though, who's better than they are and who they play at the end of the season is Liberty.
Oh, yeah.
Liberty and Coastal Carolina play each other. Liberty lost on a field goal at the gun yesterday to North Carolina State, 15-14.
Wow.
What a big feather that would have been. They've already beaten Virginia Tech and some other, maybe UMass or somebody like that, but they've beaten some big-time teams this year. Liberty is good. Hugh Freeze is their coach, used to be at Ole Miss, and he's done a heck of a job with that team. And then when you take a look at their final game, it's Coastal Carolina. That will be a dandy, and one of them is going to be in a bowl game.
Ned, I want to ask you a serious question here. It's going to sound funny, but I'm going to ask you a serious question because I watched that Coastal Carolina game yesterday, and they were playing, was it Appalachian State?
Appalachian State, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did they have a contest to decide how their helmets would look? Because that was the worst that's the worst helmet that I've ever seen.
I must admit, I don't know what it looks like.
Oh, it was like a hand-drawn picture it looked like each helmet was drawn individually with a magic marker. Hand-drawn, and it's got a guy with a corncob pipe sticking out of his mouth.
Coastal Carolina?
No, Appalachian State.
Appalachian State. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
it was terrible.
They like to portray that. That's where Coach Drinkwitz, who is now coaching Missouri, that's where he came from.
Yep, it is.
It was terrible.
They're the team. They were the 1AA before they went 1A, of course. 1AA national champs, and Michigan put them on the schedule for a little song and dance. It turned out the season and lost the game.
Yep, I remember that because Michigan was top 5, and that was their first game of the season, and Appalachian State beat them.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, and I'm sure Josh will have his opinion on this about our friend Jim Harbaugh losing his job. Do you think that's a foregone conclusion?
All he has done is fail at Michigan. I'm surprised he made it. The only reason he made it as long as he did is because he went to Michigan. He's a Michigan alum. Mm-hmm. They tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, I think he's another one of those coaches that he does well coaching in one arena and not in the
Yeah,
other.
I think that's right.
I think he's a fine NFL coach, but he just can't do it in college.
Well, you have to understand the differences, too, because in college,
Yeah, it's totally
recruiting
Yeah.
and the level of athlete that you're dealing with, we're in the pros, you're talking about guys who have been there.
Sure.
They know what's going on. You sign or make the deals to obtain proven athletes. You don't have to go out and recruit them. So it's a different format.
There have been many, like Lou Holtz was a terrible NFL coach, but Lou Holtz, everybody knows him from Notre Dame. The reverse was true with Nick Saban. He was terrible as an NFL coach, but he is a great college coach.
That's because his terrible person shtick works well.
Yeah. Yes, he can
college
lord
football.
over people and get the result he wants. In the NFL, they look at you and go, I make more money than you.
Yeah.
So
That Geico commercial is great that he does. By the way,
Gosh.
hey, can't play
Can't play
favorites.
favorites.
What does
Can't
that
play
even mean?
favorites.
I don't even get who wrote
because the
that.
guy's wearing an Alabama sweatshirt.
He's like, he probably said, "Let me write the commercial myself." Okay,
Right.
if I'm going to be in it, let me do it. And I'm not going to wear your colors. I'm going to wear these colors. Okay.
That's funny.
Well, I still think they have, they being the Crimson Tide, probably have the number one team in the country. In my opinion, great athletes. They're so doggone fast. I would like to see them play Clemson again. And although I don't think Alabama's or Oklahoma's in their caliber, I do think they'd beat them, and I really think they'd beat Ohio State as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for just a minute. We talked last week or a couple of weeks ago with Stormy about this weird college football thing that's going on. You know, is Penn State still in the top 25? Even though they haven't won a game all season. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Josh? Obviously, you have some points about it.
I don't like what it is this year. I mean, I understand that there have been so many variables, and at first the Big Ten and the Pac-12 weren't even going to play, and then they decided to play, and so that's why they're so far behind on games. But how are they? I don't understand how if Ohio State finishes the season undefeated and they've only played 6 games, how are you going to put them in the Final Four against teams that have played 10 or 11 games? How can you justify
It's
that?
totally unfair when you think about that from the chronology standpoint.
Yeah.
But keep
and
in
the
mind
attrition
now,
standpoint.
the bowl committee that puts them together is 14 individuals, and they get together and they, from a subjective standpoint, decide who the teams are. It's subjective.
Yes.
Now they're looking at the records and so forth and so on, but don't fool yourself. They're also looking at the names. They are looking at the TV attractability of these.
Revenue generation.
The
make
bank
it-
statements.
Yeah.
You can't make
exactly.
an adverb out of that, but I just did.
That's
right?
that's why Notre Dame is number 2, right?
Well, they are undefeated.
Yeah, but they're still Notre Dame.
And they beat Clemson. So you have to give
Yeah,
them
but they're
credit.
still Notre Dame.
They have now, you talk about, I'm glad to hear you mentioned that, because they do face a trap game coming up this Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. They go to Chapel Hill to play a very good North Carolina team.
Oh, yeah, North Carolina is good this year.
They are. They have a very fine football team, and if Notre Dame goes in there flat, they were off this weekend. If they go in there flat and not ready, watch out.
I have one thing to say about Notre Dame beating Clemson. Trevor Lawrence didn't play in that game.
He did not.
Or Clemson would have beat him by 30.
Wow.
I can say it because it doesn't matter.
Actually, though, it does, because when it comes to the ACC championship, instead of divisions this
that's
year,
right.
it's 1 versus 2, and they may be
They
1
probably
versus 2.
play again, yeah.
It would be in Charlotte, I think, outside game at the Carolina Panthers Stadium. I think that's where they play the ACC championship.
I do have one more question. Did they reschedule the Alabama-LSU game, or is it just not going to happen this year?
To my knowledge, they have not rescheduled it, and to not have it happen.
Oh, that's crazy.
Well, I think a lot of it might be decided upon whether or not it has any variables on these final standings. I'm guessing that's the case. I know Alabama plays this weekend against Auburn.
And then next week they play Arkansas.
Arkansas, correct.
All right. Well, about 28 minutes away from the start of the pregame show. Until then, you're stuck with us. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Art Haynes and Mitch Holtis take over in about 23 minutes. That is when you hear when you hear the start of the pregame show. My tongue and I are just not working well together today. We're just not doing it. Let's check in with John. He's going to tell us about the injury report. It's brought to you by Morrison, Webster, and Carlton.
Good news for Chiefs fans. It's a really short report for their team. Sammy Watkins, who, of course, he's just had a hard time staying healthy this year. He's out again for this game.
Every year. He has hard times. You just count out the middle part of the season for Sammy Watkins. Right. He's on vacation.
Right. On the Raiders side, it's a little more banged up, as Ned was alluding to. LaMarcus Joyner, their safety, is ruled out. Sam Young, their offensive tackle, is questionable. Maurice Hurst, their defensive tackle, is questionable. And Jalen Richard, their young running back, is questionable.
Let me ask you a question. COVID-19. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't like to talk about it, but I mean, it's just a fact of life right now with everything that we're going through. I don't understand how, like, one or two guys on the team can have it and the rest of the team is quarantined, because right. You're really not cleared until that 14-day quarantine period's up. I mean, the test is almost useless in a way.
Well, it's the newest form of battling against a pandemic. Contact tracing.
Yes.
Well, guys, a little personal note here. I had, when I was a kid, I had a disease that was communicable, and I have two brothers, and they were quarantined. It was not for any 14 days. It was for about 3 or 4, as I remember it. But, the health department had come up and put up the sign. It's scarlet fever is what it was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought it was hand and foot mouth.
It could have been. Yeah. Back then it could have been. But this contact tracing in 14 days, I have never heard of before. Yeah. Now, it's all based on what the period of time is that COVID-19 can develop.
Right.
But in the NFL, they also have the protocol of saying, well, if you can take and pass 2 tests and you've been exposed to this person and you're not going to be positive, you can play.
Yep.
And that's what it is with, I think, 8 of the Raiders tonight,
yes.
but there are 4 of them who do have the
yes.
disease itself, so they are out.
They're out as well.
This is so unknown what we're dealing with here. As to, I'm not being critical. It just is a situation in which, in my opinion, as a non-scientist and a non-doctor, that we have overreacted in a lot of respects.
We overreacted earlier when we were talking about the Cowboys having a lead, because that's gone.
That's evaporated.
By the way, it's 21. Wait, there's a personal foul. I knew it was going to be on the Cowboys. They're really chippy. When the Giants and them played, they might as well just have boxing gloves on. All right, John, let's check in with you again for our fantasy pick. If I can talk, it's brought to you by Fazoli's.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, as far as fantasy players go, I haven't really given much love to quarterback options, and with what's taken place in the NFL the last week, a lot of people are hurting after Drew Brees broke more ribs than I knew there were in the human rib cage. And then, of course, you've got today Joe Burrow being carted off. So
if you've got him on your roster, move him off.
Yeah, so a couple of guys you can look at picking up. Number one, a guy that's very familiar to most people probably listening to this broadcast, Alex Smith has looked fantastic in 3 games. He's not putting up gaudy numbers by any means, but solid. He's got that team winning. And then the other person, a lot of people, I looked at the waiver wire, kind of nationwide on Yahoo. And boy, people were jumping on Jameis Winston. They were picking him up left and right. Yeah. He didn't play, guys.
He didn't get started.
Taysom Hill played.
Taysom Hill played, and that's my other pick. Kid out of BYU had 2, I say kid, he's 30 years old at this point. 2 rushing touchdowns, did not look bad at all today. I think he's going to get the starts moving forward.
Where's Jeff George? Somebody needs to pick him up off the waiver wire.
He's mowing his lawn right now.
There are so many variables when it comes to available players, and there are. You can go out there and, you have the very famous case of Kurt Warner stocking the shelves and so on. Let's get him, and we'll go to a Super Bowl. But the fact is that we do have it's a game of concussion. I don't mean that necessarily with head injuries. Just a concussive circumstance in which bodily injuries are going to happen.
Yes.
And you're going to lose players. The rate of attrition is a key factor in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
I have gotten a chance over the last couple of weeks to watch the Cardinals play, because they've been, I think, 2 weeks in a row. We're on like the Sunday night game. I've been really impressed with Kyler Murray. He's played
Absolutely.
really well, and they put a good little team around him. And that's something that we talk about a lot on the show, that you have to have the pieces, all the pieces, not just the quarterback, but you have to have the pieces around you. The Cardinals look like a team that's on the rise.
DeAndre Hopkins makes all the difference in the world in that situation. And I know people get paid more money than I do. I'm not a GM. I'm not a manager. I'm not an owner. But the trade that sent Hopkins from the Texans to the Cardinals is one of the most lame brain transactions I have ever seen in my entire life.
I think one of the reasons that we don't hear anything about is that they wanted him gone
Yes.
for some reason.
Yeah.
Houston wanted him out of there. Arizona said, well, how about David Johnson? And David Johnson was a great star in the Valley at
Yes.
Northern Iowa, but and he may have had 1 or 2 good years in the NFL, but he is not having them now. In fact, I think he may be out for the year. But the fact is, I think the Texans wanted the guy sayonara.
Well, and I think based on what I'm seeing with the coaching staff there, I think almost everybody wants to say sayonara in whatever language to get the heck off that roster.
Oh, my gosh,
What a
yeah.
train wreck.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. We've got a chance to go over this with Stormy a couple of weeks ago about surprises and disappointments in the season. And Josh, let's start with you because we haven't had John in a while. What's been your biggest surprise, your biggest disappointment at just over the halfway point of the season?
Well, I have been one of the biggest detractors for the Cleveland Browns, so they're my biggest surprise this year. For them to be 7-3, because I don't think Baker Mayfield's a good quarterback, but they have a lot of talent on that team, and they're showing it this year. 7-3 is crazy for that team, the perennial doghouse of the Cleveland Browns. As far as disappointment, there's several teams. The Jets are terrible. The Jaguars are terrible.
Did you expect the Jets to be any good?
Well,
though?
yeah. I mean, I expect the Jets to be bad. I'm disappointed. I'm going to say I'm disappointed in Ned's Eagles.
Yep, so am I.
Oh,
So
boy.
am I. My green and white was supposed to be a very formidable championship contender, not necessarily Super Bowl, but championship contender, and they are awful. Watching their game today with the Cleveland Browns, the offensive line has gone on vacation. They're not playing at all. Poor Carson Wentz under siege in the backfield, couldn't get time to throw anything. And this is a team that was considered to be a playoff contender. Oh, my, they are a major disappointment.
And what's weird is that entire division is so subpar this year.
There's the NFC right now on this TV screen. New Orleans, Green Bay, Seattle Eagles are the division leader. One of the biggest disappointments. Wild card Tampa Bay right now, Los Angeles, Arizona, and then in the hunt, Chicago, Minnesota. It's pretty much the standard teams that are out there. John, what do you,
in terms of surprises, too, Joe, you do have to look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh,
there are a lot of folks who are, well, they're just picking up Brady and Gronkowski and some of these others just for laughs. And,
Right.
there's not a term I can use on the air, but yeah, they're just picking that up to help with the franchise. Those guys have played well.
Yeah,
and they
they
can
have.
play well.
But
and
they
they
kinda-
play the Chiefs next
they've
weekend.
been kind of up and down, though, a little
Yeah,
bit.
they're
too.
inconsistent. Yeah.
John, what's your thoughts on that? Who would you take to the prom right now?
As far as my surprise, it's definitely going to be, and we talked a little bit about this on the break, the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, getting Phillip Rivers and still being in contention like they've been, T.Y. Hilton is having an absolutely terrible year for them. And, I mean, it's just I don't see the roster build as a successful team, but they keep coming out on the good end of the scoreboard. And not to pile on, my disappointment's definitely the Texans. And you know you've got a bad situation and a bad culture when at the trade deadline they're looking to trade Will Fuller, their star receiver left after Hopkins left. From what I understand, basically Deshaun Watson said, if you trade him, I will sit out the rest of the year.
Oh, wow.
I will quit.
Wow.
He said he's the only guy catching the ball for me right now downfield. He's my weapon. I'm not going to play without personnel.
So are they going to have a fire sale at the end of the season with that team?
I think they're going to have a fire sale in the coaching department.
Yeah. Ned, what's your thoughts on that?
Bulletin, the Dallas Cowboys
Yeah,
have just
retaking the lead.
regained the lead.
This is so exciting. Two teams going nowhere.
Are you making reference to positives or negatives?
Either one. However you want to take this
Well,
right now.
at first this season, I really liked the play of the Buffalo Bills. They have come back to earth a little bit.
Yeah.
But they're still a formidable ball club. Disappointments, the Patriots, of course, they have not played
Yeah,
anywhere
they
near
stink.
to their capabilities. They get They get the Cam Newton in there to solve all their problems, and he hasn't done anything.
Scam Newton.
Yeah, that's what it is. It is Scam Newton. And I do have to, for pleasant surprises, the Miami Dolphins. Tuivasa has just played very, very well.
Roll Tide.
As for me, as revealed on this show 3 weeks ago, I grew up as a Raiders fan.
Mm-hmm.
And the Raiders are my surprise because, I kind of watch and see what they're doing. And they, the Raiders are a team that disappoints in a game. They'll be really brilliant one moment, and then the next moment they look like they are a Pee Wee League team that hasn't practiced at all. Yep. And this season I've waited for that moment for them, and so far they haven't. I mean, they played pretty well. They've been to me a surprising team so far this season because I really didn't think John Gruden could do it. That's what I think on that.
Agreed.
Yeah, we're about 12 minutes away from the start of the pregame show. We will do more Ned Talk and give you our picks in just a moment.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs Radio Network. You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs Radio Network.
Let's see if I can get this right. The last 2 weeks I've gotten it completely wrong because the stupid schedule. They are playing in Vegas tonight, so the weather is warm, 69, and they're going to have sunny skies. I guess it doesn't really matter, though, because it won't be sunny by the time they're playing the game tonight. Let's get our check-in with Ned one more time because he's going to tell us about his player of the week, and that is brought to you by Mid-Missouri Bank.
Okay, my player of the week, because I think it's going to be a relatively high-scoring game, is Tyreek Hill. I think they will go to him quite often. Hill has his counterpart, Henry Ruggs, playing for the Raiders, and they both claim to be the fastest players in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Hey, Tyreek Hill has an ego, guys. I know that comes as a major surprise to both of you. He's going to go out there tonight, and he's going to. I think he's going to shine. I pick him as the key player on the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm. Newsflash: the Cowboys have lost the lead. It is 27-24 now. Just so you guys know. So let's get our picks for tonight's game. Ned, what do you think? We'll start with you.
High-scoring game, and I look for the Chiefs to have more points than the other team. I look for Kansas City to win this one tonight. I think they can score on the Raiders, but I also think that the Raiders can score on them. I'm not sold on the Spagnuolo level of top defense. Hey, the Chiefs are, 29th in the NFL in guarding against the run. Mm-hmm. Josh Jacobs plays for this team. Carr is no slouch, guys. No, okay, 40-30 is my final score. Chiefs 40, Raiders 30.
John.
The trap I'm afraid people are going to fall into this game are forgetting about the tools that I mentioned to you, Joe, that the Raiders have. They've got Hunter Renfrow as an up-and-coming receiving star. Devontae Booker is a really nice running back to complement Jacobs. That being said, I think there's a lot of psychological edge with the Chiefs after that loss. I'm going to pick it to be kind of ugly. I'm going to go 43-21 Chiefs.
All right, Josh, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's going to be 34-20 Chiefs, just because they're going to come out, hit them hard, score a bunch of points, and then the Raiders are good enough that they'll score, and come back a little bit. But I'm thinking like 34-20.
I'm going to put my job online today. I'm going to pick the Raiders. And the reason why, here's my thought. Raiders are a decent team.
Yeah,
I don't think that they're better than the Chiefs, but sometimes there are teams that other teams have a difficult time beating for whatever matchup reasons, whatever. So I'm going to say that the Raiders eke out a 27-24 win. That's what I'm picking. Now, last time we did this, roll back the tape here. Last time we did this, you said, there's no way that the Chiefs.
Don't you just love his imitation? I
know, right?
That is so bad. No, it's not.
I actually do a really good one of you when you're not in the room. But
are you sober when that happens?
but you said that, there's no way that the Raiders can beat the Chiefs, and they did.
They did. I do remember saying that, and I have to withdraw my statement, but the fact of the matter remains that I just don't think that from a consistency standpoint, Kansas City can stay down that. I just think they're going to score. Yeah. But again, I do have great doubts about the defensive level of things.
It should be an interesting game tonight. Remember, it is America's game tonight. All America will
Now,
be tuned in to watch the game.
Everybody to the coup de grace for our show. How much time do we have remaining?
We've got about 3 minutes.
Oh,
2.5,
I
let's say.
can't do the coup de grace yet.
Why
I'm
not?
going to do my rendition of Carrie Underwood.
Oh, you're going to sing the song?
You've been waiting all day for Sunday night. No, I can't.
Is that why you came to the studio in a skirt, Ned? I was wondering what was
Wow,
up with
we
that.
have really reached a new low point in the history of Ned Talk. So, and let me tell you, we've gone pretty low before. So Thanksgiving is just a couple of days away. So happy Thanksgiving to all you guys. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody
You as
listening.
well.
Let's talk about the games that are happening this week really quickly. Ravens, Steelers, quickly. Josh.
Steelers stay undefeated.
I will guarantee, this is my guarantee for the year, the Ravens will win this.
Lock.
And where are they playing?
Steelers.
I'll have to go with Pittsburgh in a very close game.
All right. Texans and Lions.
Ooh, I think the Texans win.
Texans.
I'll choose Lions. Okay, the team from Washington and the boys.
That's the Thanksgiving Day game.
Yes, these are all Thanksgiving Day
I'll
games.
pick
by the way.
Washington because, like we've said before, Washington's playing really well.
So what do you think?
Definitely go with Alex Smith in Washington.
Got to go with the boys. Playing at home on Thanksgiving, yeah, got to.
I'm going with Washington. I think they're a team on the upswing. Somebody's got to take control of that stinking conference.
Here's your question, guys. Here's the question for the day. The Thanksgiving Day morning game, am I correct? Is Detroit and Houston?
Yes, it is.
How many in the country are going to watch that? Who cares?
Right.
People in Detroit.
And maybe some in Houston.
A couple
but-
of people in Houston.
It's not the. It's by far not the best Thanksgiving Day schedule, but enjoy your turkey.
Yes.
Ned, have a fabulous Thanksgiving.
It's very nice, thank you.
John, do you and yours have a fabulous Thanksgiving?
sir.
Josh, you and yours
Thank you,
have a
and-
fabulous Thanksgiving.
And to yours as well.
And to all of you, have a fabulous Thanksgiving. It's Ned Talk. I want to say thanks to Nick Fury, Mike the intern. I hope that I have a job tomorrow morning. Scott Meyer and Corbin Campbell. Get set. Mitch Oltis on the way next.